The most popular team in Counter-Strike history is without a doubt NAVI. No other organization has ever built such a massive and passionate fanbase. Their popularity peaked during the CSGO era. In 2020 alone, NAVI's matches accumulated 61 million views. That's around 50% more than the second most watched team. And if you narrow the scope from the global community to the CIS region, their impact becomes even more significant. NAVI were such a legendary organization that even complete rookies recognize them while playing their very first Silver 2 matchmaking games. But how did they become so successful? Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, because you're watching CYBERSHOKE, and in today's nostalgic video, we'll break down why NAVI became the most popular team in Counter-Strike. Guys, we've teamed up with SkinRave to bring you a massive promotion where you can get a free premium subscription on CYBERSHOKE. To claim it, simply sign up on the SkinRave website using the code CYBERSHOKE and make a deposit of $4 or more. Once you've met the requirements, your free premium subscription will appear in your inventory, ready to activate. You can also complete SkinRave-sponsored missions on CYBERSHOKE to earn tokens, which you can exchange for free skins and other awesome rewards. Huge thanks to SkinRave for supporting the channel. Be sure to claim your free reward while the promotion is still active, and enjoy the video. NAVI's peak popularity came during the CSGO era. The foundation for their success was laid much earlier though, all the way back in CS 1.6. Let's talk about how it happened. We won't dive too deep into the history of NAVI's first roster, that's already been covered in a separate video on our channel. But the most important thing is that around 2010, a team of 5 guys from Ukraine first became the best team in the world and then went on to break a huge number of records. NAVI's results were outstanding, and they can be easily compared to Vitality in CS2. NAVI's roster also featured Yegor Markelev, the most dominant player in CS 1.6 history. No one shined as brightly as he did, and an entire generation of oppers, including Simple, studied his demos. NAVI's first wave of popularity was driven purely by their results. They were playing at such an incredible level that the entire region couldn't stop talking about them, and their dominance served as many people's first introduction to esports across the Russian-speaking community. The timing couldn't have been better either. Starting around 2008, the number of home computers across the CIS region began to grow rapidly, while internet access became faster and more affordable. Games like CS 1.6 and GTA San Andreas were among the first things that people installed after Windows, which meant more and more players were being introduced to the world of esports. In the following chapters, we'll talk more about social media numbers, sponsorship deals, and the business side of NAVI, but none of that would have been possible without 5 ordinary guys from Ukraine who were simply unbelievably good at Counter-Strike. Our story gets even more interesting in the early years of CSGO. NAVI entered the new game as one of the biggest organizations in Counter-Strike, yet they consistently failed to meet the expectations of even their most loyal fans. It was one of the biggest disappointments in the organization's history, and it created a major challenge for the management. You see, during its early years, NAVI was funded by the Kazakh businessman Arbalet, who supported the organization out of personal interest. That funding came to an end in the winter of 2011, forcing NAVI to look for another source of financial support. Just a year later, the Counter-Strike roster switched to CSGO, and their results fell off dramatically. Instead of battling Fnatic for the title of the world's best team, they suddenly weren't even in the top 10. Naturally, that posed a serious threat to the organization's revenue. Fortunately, NAVI's management handled the situation well. They seemed to realize that sponsorships weren't driven solely by trophies, they could also be earned through media presence. As a result, NAVI became the first Counter-Strike organization to actively turn its players into stars, consistently uploading videos featuring them that earned millions of views. So if we look back at 2013, we'll find that there were even stronger teams than NAVI within the CIS region. They trailed Virtus Pro in terms of results and were roughly on par with Astana Dragons. But when it came to media presence, they were far ahead. The organization did an outstanding job of preserving the reputation it had built during the 1.6 era. Senya and Zeus played a particularly important role in that success. Arseni transitioned into streaming, while Zeus built a great personal brand without stepping away from his role as the team's IGL. We mentioned how clever management helped Navi stay afloat during a major decline in form, but of course, that was only a temporary solution. Obviously, without results, a team can't truly become legendary. The turning point came in 2014, when Edward returned to the team and brought Guardian with him. This was the first Navi CSGO roster that could realistically compete for trophies. The Slavic filled the gap left by Markelev, while rookie Seas provided significantly more firepower than Senya. And at this point, you might ask, but weren't there other strong CIS teams in CSGO back then? What happened to all of them? And that question leads us to one of the key reasons behind Navi's success. Back then, there was a trend in the CIS scene so influential that it even earned an unofficial name. We're talking about the CIS factor. Let's break down what it means and how it played a critical role in Navi's rise in popularity. The CIS region has never lacked talented players. Eastern Europe has always had a huge number of Counter-Strike players, and people here tend to be passionate and hardworking. The problems usually started when those individuals had to function as a team. For reasons that still aren't entirely clear, early CIS teams were extremely fragile mentally. There were constant arguments, roster changes came one after another, and players were quick to blame one another. For example, this led to the collapse of Astana Dragons, which on paper was supposed to become the best team in the world. First, they had a conflict with Edward and quickly benched him. Then, 8 months later, Markelov stated that the team had no strategies and soon left. Then, another 8 months after that, the legendary Dosia, quoting Adrian here, tilted and left right before a major. And that's how the original Astana Dragons roster, made up of genuinely brilliant players, ended up achieving nothing, for reasons completely unrelated to their individual skill. And something very similar was happening across almost every CIS team except Navi. Of course, we're not going to pretend that Navi had a perfect atmosphere back then. They didn't. There was still plenty of toxicity, conflict, and internal drama, but somehow they managed to keep the roster together and avoid falling apart after every disagreement. Let's look at what this led to. We can start with the HLTV rankings from January 2016. There we see Navi sitting in second place, while the closest Russian-speaking team is only 16th and shows no signs of breaking into the top 10 anytime soon. This period played a critical role in Navi's popularity. CSGO was attracting millions of players every year, and it was only natural that many people from the CIS wanted to support their region. The problem was there simply wasn't any other consistent contenders on the local scene. There were no teams consistently winning matches, or even regularly attending major tournaments. As a result, for many years, young Counter-Strike players from Eastern Europe naturally started rooting for Navi, simply because there were no real alternatives. For Navi, it was success they had truly earned. This chapter will be the shortest one, because on one hand, Simple's phenomenon doesn't really need an introduction, and on the other, Sasha definitely deserves a dedicated segment of his own. In 2016, a young player named Alexander Kostelev signed with Navi, and it became one of the most important moments in the organization's history. By 2018, Simple had been recognized as the best player in the world, and since then he's established himself as the greatest talent in Counter-Strike history. Signing Simple benefited Navi in every possible way. Kostelev wasn't just an incredible skilled player, he was also one of the most recognizable personalities in the entire scene. He was controversial, outspoken, and explosive, always saying exactly what he thought, which constantly got him into trouble. At one point, he even came close to being kicked from Faceit Pro League because of communication issues, despite being the team's clear standout in terms of skill. Sasha was also very active on Twitch. At his peak, his average viewership was comparable to today's biggest CIS streamers. And considering that Simple obviously didn't use view botting services, you can imagine just how influential his presence really was. If we look at Simple's popularity in terms of pure numbers, he became the first Counter-Strike player to reach 1 million followers on Twitch. He also still holds the most popular clip in the game's history. Today he ranks first in Instagram followers among pro players and third on X, behind Nico and Fallen. The last important period for us was the so-called online era. By that point, teams from the region were making far fewer roster changes, and the pandemic had locked them inside their apartments and boot camps. This period became a true celebration of CIS Counter-Strike. While many elite teams struggled to find their form and were constantly falling apart, Russian-speaking teams started taking over the HLTV rankings. If we look at the rankings from March 2021, we can see that 4 CIS teams were sitting in the top 6. Where NAVI once had no real competition for the attention of CIS fans, they were now surrounded by strong regional rivals. For the team, this became another challenge. Could they remain the regional leaders when so many organizations were now fighting for that spot? In short, they succeeded. NAVI benefited greatly from decisions made in previous years. For example, the smart roster move involving Zeus, as well as signing a coach whom Simple would later consider a true authority. The Stockholm Major gave us the final answer. All the teams that had challenged NAVI's dominance during the pandemic were left far behind. The grand final reached 2,748,434 peak viewers. NAVI had reached the absolute peak of their popularity, a success earned by both the players and the organization's management. But what do you guys think? Was NAVI's popularity during the CSGO era truly deserved? And where do you see the organization going from here? Let us know in the comments. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the best esports content. See you soon, guys.